Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us once again for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, if you have not been told yet, is always to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazenko, science fiction and horror author, reader, life, the universe and everything lover, and one of your hosts and co-founder of Australian Book Lovers. Coming to you today from Corner Country in South Australia.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, fantasy, memoir, picture book writer, voracious reader, and your co-founder and host, coming to you from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country on this, our episode number 69. And of course, you know, Life, the Universe and Everything is from the fabulous Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, and so many quotes. I could come back at you and say, have you got your towel, Darren, you know, and never let a Vorgon read poetry to you. All those kind of things.
Well, you could, and you might get a sort of a stunned mullet glare at the moment. Only because when I popped that Life, the Universe and Everything in there, because I'm just doing a little course on it's called Super Earths and the search and how we use science to search for possible life out there in the universe, and so of course, a little bit of my brain has been back floating through space these last few days. So
there you go. Let's start with the bingo call for 69. Very important. I know that people really log onto the podcast just to hear the bingo calls.
Absolutely.
And 69 is a favourite of mine. So when you hear the bingo call favourite of mine, he's going to say 69.
Well, there you go. Favourite of mine. Yeah. I think that's a very down the line safe bingo call.
Yes, indeed it is. So what about for you? Are you going to share with us any significance in the number 69?
Oh, yes.
From the kind of magical
Yes.
aspects?
Well, apparently the number 69 can appear as a message of support and empowerment. And there's also suggestions that 69 represents an important phase or cycle that may be coming to an end in your life, and that is happening for a very karmic reason. So these necessary endings that or closures that may be happening will lead you, apparently, to find your true life path and purpose, which you are prompted to fully undertake. So I don't know. One thing I know, which I'm hoping is ending and putting a closure just for now, is winter. Because it is just hanging around like an unwanted party guest.
Don't we just?
Yes, eating chips out of the bowls and looking for chocolates under the cushions. Just go home, winter. You are drunk. But the year 1969, in celebration of our episode 1969, was a quite interesting one for Australia. Now, but at the same time, I thought it would be jam-packed with historical moments. And to my surprise, well, it wasn't as jam-packed as a lot of the years we've already looked at, but still a couple of cool things happened. So a very important thing happened, I guess. On the 19th of June in 1969, the Commonwealth Conciliation and Arbitration Commission ruled that equal pay for women doing the same work as men must be phased in by 1972. So there we go. So that's obviously a very big step forward for Australia, coming out of the late 69, ready to get into the groovy 1970s. And
yes, although we've got a way to go, Darren, in terms of equal pay. But yes, that was a good time.
Yes. Well, I think I don't know how it works now. I mean, for every role I've done has been equal with everything. But I guess when you're getting higher up into the big management roles, perhaps where there's more negotiation, maybe that's where that inequality comes. Because I'm not too sure. It's just not. I have no idea. I'm a complete penguin when it comes to that sort of stuff, in the sense of I haven't seen it in the real world. I've only ever seen equal. But
And
then
no
I'm
offence
not
to
a
penguins.
high-powered CEO. So. Well, yeah, but the penguins, they just stand there looking in the snow.
They are gorgeous.
Yeah, nothing phases a penguin. It's freezing cold, and but yeah, so very important in 1969. Also, that an equally important aspect of 1969 is on the 16th of December, Prime Minister John Gorton announced that a withdrawal of Australian Army troops from the Vietnam War would begin the following year in 1970. So common sense prevails there.
Yep.
This is the part I like. On the 20th of July, NASA switches the main transmission feed of Apollo 11 moon landing to Honeysuckle Creek Tracking Station in Canberra, then Parkes Observatory in New South Wales, which then broadcasted the mission to the world. So there we come in and kick the goal at the last second for one of the most historical moments, so far on this planet for the human race. And
Beautiful.
it all came down to a Honeysuckle Creek Tracking Station in Canberra.
It did indeed, and if you've seen the movie The Dish, that's a classic. I do love that. That is quite funny, where they're playing cricket on the dish.
As you do.
As you do. Yes.
And I also saw that apparently the last tram was, the last tram ran in Brisbane in 1969. So the end of the tram's there. So there we go. Another whole great deal of events, but the events in there are quite important. So really looking forward now, because we are going into the 70s. Yeah, baby.
Yahoo!
With the times of the real Led Zeppelin albums, the real rock and roll albums. And so I can't wait to see what's happening in Australia during the 70s. But that is a little bit of 69 for this very special edition, because what powerhouse guests have we been so lucky to be able to chat with today on this episode?
So exciting.
Unbelievable.
Yes, absolutely fantastic. So not only do we have a brilliant double interview with Aaron Farso and Michelle Scott Tucker, but we've also got a special guest who comes into the Writers' Lounge, Claire Roden. So it is action-packed, and we need to get through our stuff really quickly, because all of these people have so many brilliant things to share with us, and their writing, their stories is just fantastic. So I'm going to dive in really quickly to meanings and origins of Australian words.
Oh, yes, of course.
From the School of Literature, Languages and Linguistics, Australian National University. We are up to H. So there are so many really good ones. So I'm going to start with one that I didn't know. So have you ever heard of a Huey?
Only by helicopter, maybe?
No, indeed. Huey is in fact the rain god, and the appeal "Send it down, Huey" is a request for a heavy fall of rain. And the phrase was first recorded in 1912. And since the 1950s, apparently surfers have also employed the god's name in a request for good waves.
That's right. I didn't even put two and two together there. Yes, Huey. Come on, Huey, bring on the swells. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So theories about the origin of the word Huey range from alterations of the names Jupiter, Zeus, or Yahweh to the classical Greek Huei, which is Huei, it is raining. And so you can, send down, you can have a look at it a little bit more, but I'd never heard of that. So apparently even as late as, what have we got, in 2014 and Outback in June. And so on behalf of South West Queensland, Huey, please send her down. So there you go. Now, a particularly Australian one, if I was to say the word hoon, you would of course know what a hoon is.
Oh, of course, yes. Yes.
I won't say that you're a hoon or that you spent any of your youth as a hoon.
Actually, no, I had a panel van. It was impossible to be a hoon in a panel van. I could be many other things in a panel van, but not a hoon.
Well, there you go. That's something else we have in common, because my first car was a panel van. Mind you, it was an old Tyler's van who, it just got me to uni and back, and that was it. But it was still a panel van. All right. For those that don't know, and for our listeners from overseas, a hoon is, in fact, a lout or an exhibitionist, especially a young male who drives dangerously or at reckless speed. The origin of the word is unknown, but suggestions for its origin include an alteration of Australian English hooer, which is Hooer, a prostitute, a general term of abuse, an alteration of Australian English poon, a simpleton or fool, a contraction of hooligan, and the Scottish word hoon, Hune, which is a loiterer, a drone, a lazy, silly person. So I think Australians have made it their own. But from the 1930s, hoon had that meaning a lout or an exhibitionist. And of course, these things are quite dangerous with the people doing the drag racing and hooning around. And there are laws in most Australian states where you are not allowed to do that anymore because it's often done in public roads and people can get hurt. So there you go.
Absolutely.
That's hoon.
A great movie that came out of Melbourne from the early 80s called Metal Skin was kind of about hoon, like illegal drag racing as such, but completely off topic. But there can be, I know it's a serious subject, there can be a comedic element to hoons driving because I know, I live down on the coast and we've got the main road and obviously the coastal road here, and every now and then you hear the hoons, the look at me engines and mufflers and all that jazz. And there's nothing better than hearing a burnout or someone rah 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 but then 2 seconds later they'll wow 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 the police is like busted buddy.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, but there you go.
But you can
we've
go
all
to
been young
places
once.
and do go to proper places to do.
Oh yeah.
I won't say official hooning, but the Thunderdome here, the Calder Thunderdome's not far from our place, or not within hearing distance, but there are places where you can do that and ruin your tyres and make smoke and do all of those things. So there are so many H's that I have to, restrict myself to a couple. I'm going to just give you one more, and this is the ubiquitous Hills hoist.
Ah, yes, of course, which, if the world doesn't know yet, is a South Australian invention.
There you go.
Imagine the life of wet clothes. And so now every time you put on that dry T-shirt or dry pair of shorts, say thank you, South Australia.
Nice little dig there. So the Hills hoist is a rotary clothesline fitted with a hoist that's operated by a crown and pinion winding mechanism. So Lance Hill is commonly thought to have invented the rotary clothesline, but he adapted the existing design in 1946 by including his own winding mechanism, and it's used, generically in Australia for a rotary clothesline. Put it on the Hills hoist. Now, as a symbol, it's both positive and negative connotations in Australian culture. So as a positive symbol, it featured in the opening ceremony of the 2000 Sydney Olympics, which was a bit of a cringe if you ask me, but anyway. The cultural symbols of our backyard suburbia, the Hills hoist and the lawnmower, are so respectably well entrenched that they featured in the Olympics. There you go. But as a negative symbol, it stands for the dreary sameness and ordinariness of Australian suburbia. In an interview in the Herald Sun in 2007, Barry Humphries, in his role of Dame Edna Everage, explains what would have been the Dame's fate if she hadn't met Barry. I would still be in a suburban house. I might even be dead. I would have been up to my wrists in grey water with peas and mutton fat floating in it. I would have been staring through chipped Venetian blinds at rusted Hills hoists and broken plastic toys. I would be locked into the rather sad, Valium-infested life of so many women. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a bit of a sharp-pointed statement there. But imagine trying to write it in 2022. I mean, I see the developments around where we are, and and I've seen the photos, the overhead photos for a lot of new developments in New South Wales, like in the Sydney region and stuff. And yes, well, it's literally identical little squares, with virtually, with a half-court tennis court backyard, and a lot of these places that are going up, like the new suburbs, you wouldn't fit a Hills hoist in the backyard.
That's all sort of side against the garage. It's interesting. Australia has the dream to, one of the Australian dreams is to own, for everyone to have own their own little quarter-acre block and have their own home, and it is still a thing. But it's a bit tough with the, not only the land, but also with the interest rates such as they are, and the difficulties for young people getting in. And of course, my kids say, oh yes, because they are sort of around about that millennials that they like the avocado smashed avocado just too much, so they can't afford to get a house. But there is all of the, I guess, the connections of owning your own home into what it is to be an adult, and to have a dream, and to be grounded, and to find your own place in the world, and all those kind of things. So yeah, there you go. So We got a little bit philosophical of the Hills horse.
There we go. Yes, it is a powerful symbol. Yes.
Indeed. Is it time for the news?
I think it's time for the news because then we can get to the fantastic interview. So let's jump into some news. So, a quick bit of news for this episode 69. In, of course, what is one of my favourite months of the year, there is a event coming up now, actually, the event has started, but it's going to run until the 16th of October. The event is called Terra Australis Readers and Writers Festival, or TARWF, and is Australia's southernmost literary festival, a celebration of books, writing, and community in the glorious Huon Valley in Tasmania. So we'll put a link in the show notes, but that is the Terra Australis Readers and Writers Festival happening right now, and will be happening all the way through to 16th of October. So, of course, I saw Terra and thought, yay, but obviously there's a different connotation to the word Terra for that one. Quite. Yeah. There is also the Australian Short Story Festival Incorporated. So the Australian Short Story Festival is celebrating short stories. It's in Perth, and that's going to be the 28th to the 30th of October. The Australian Short Story Festival is an annual celebration of short-form storytelling. The festival brings together local, national and international short story authors and oral storytellers in a culturally diverse and vibrant celebration of storytelling in the shorter form. So that sounds pretty damn cool, and that is the 28th to the 30th of October. So if you are in Perth, the Australian Short Story Festival. And again, we'll find a link in our show notes so you can click and have a look. But just a couple of things, a couple of events to keep your eye out. I mean, two beautiful places of the country, one in Tasmania and one over there in Western Australia. So two beautiful festivals to go have a look at. I will be possibly coming up with a few spooky ones coming soon, but we're still early days in October. So that is my little bit of news for today.
Very good, very good. Wanted to let you know that entries to the 2023 Stella Prize close in 1 week. So get onto the website and have a look at that. Now, there's also Writing New South Wales, along with Text Publishing, are proud to announce the 2023 Boundless Indigenous Writers Mentorship with support from the First Nations Australian Writers Network and Booktopia. So thank you to those four groups for bringing together a prize that intends to nurture a powerful new Indigenous voice in Australian literature, which is fantastic. So the Boundless Indigenous Writers Mentorship. And entries for the 2023 Miles Franklin Literary Award are now open, and you can find out more about that by Googling or go to perpetual.com.au/Miles Franklin. Under the Queensland Literary Awards, Another Day in the Colony by Chelsea Wattago has taken out the Courier Mail People's Choice, and that is a fantastic book. Speaking of the Stella Prize, Evelyn Araluen, who won the 2022 Stella Prize with her book Drop Bear, which of course is beautiful poetry, is in conversation with celebrated American poet and thinker Claudia Rankine, and they discuss the potential of poetry for political resistance as part of the Big Anxiety, which is challenges artists, scientists and communities to question and reimagine the state of mental health in the 21st century. So really good. So check on the Wheeler Centre for that one. But so many good things happening. I mean, and yeah, there's events as you've mentioned, and there's I wanted to mention also the Berry Festival. Let me just go. Yeah, the Berry Writers Festival is on the 21st to the 23rd. So in the historic town of Berry on the south coast of New South Wales. So jump into that one as well, and check with your local book clubs, support your indie bookstores. Sadly, my indie bookstore, New Leaves in Woodend, has closed, which is really sad. I was chatting to Woody, but yeah, he just could not keep the business going, which was pretty sad. So now I have to go back to ordering all my books online, which is okay. It still, pays for the author and all those kind of things. But yeah, that was a bit sad that our local bookstore is no longer. So we don't have one anymore.
Well, it just means road trips now. So
Big
an
road trips,
inspiration
unfortunately, yeah. And so with the
explore.
price of petrol,
Yeah, that's the negative. The positive, maybe explore some parts you haven't been to before, or towns you haven't seen, or areas that might still have that nice dusty secondhand books to grab. You just never know. Or the markets, which hopefully will be coming out thick and strong now that spring weather is finally slowly to come, and that's always a good. You never know. You pull over for that random market, and there's usually someone selling a bunch of books, and you never know what treasures you're going to find. But speaking of treasures, of course, we were given an absolute treasure with our interview today, but I think we're going to need a bit of energy before we go to the interview, because there's some very powerful messages in there, and some very really important topics discussed by two wonderful people. So do you think maybe we'll just quickly pop into our Readers Cafe and just maybe have a tea, have a coffee, and get ready for what is going to be an amazing show?
sounds good. Let's go.
All right, let's step in. Now, what cafe are you in today?
So what cafe am I in today? I think I'm in an encouraging spring cafe. So while I might be at one of my favourite cafes, I'm going to say Baringo up on Station Road in New Gisborne, I'm sitting outside today. I'm not in by the fire. I'm in under the veranda, and I'm looking at the flowers that are coming out. I'm looking at one of my favourite iron gates across the road. And yeah, I'm ready to hear all about some new books. Tell
Excellent.
us.
Yes. Well, I know my cafe is. It's not an imagined cafe. It's a real one. It's just not open yet. But I'm just trying to will the summer to happen, because just down the road we have a wonderful little cafe / restaurant on the beach at Port Noarlunga, and they actually have the Cabana Club. So they have all the Cabana chairs and brollies, and so you can lay back in one of those under the sun and just order a coffee or a cocktail, whatever you might do. But of course, this is the Readers Cafe, so I wanted to make sure it is a coffee only. So that's where I am. But yes, absolutely. So it's all about reading, and for lovers of books, and we've got some great titles that have been submitted, and new titles on the website. So I just wanted to maybe sit here, have a sip of coffee, and let you know about some great titles. The first one is so cool. It is called Mysterious Isles, and that is by author B.J. Hilton, so B.J. Hilton has been a wonderful guest on the show previously, and he has a book featured in our science fiction genre called Champagne Charlie and the Amazing Gladys, a fantastic read. But this Mysterious Isles, it was so great to see the title pop up, because it was something that he was talking about in his interview that I was lucky enough to have with him for the show. And so Mysterious Isles reads as follows. In the Australian suburb of South Hurtling stands the Handy Pavilion, a seemingly ordinary big box hardware store with very extraordinary staff members. One of these is Axel Platzoff, a former supervillain. Tired of losing battles to Captain Stella, Axel has taken gainful employment at the pavilion as part of an amnesty offer from the International Criminal Court. And Axel is content after a fashion. But the arrival of the rival DIY barn across the street threatens Axel's job and the jobs of all his new friends. Axel gains support and fights back the only way he knows how, only to discover that there is far more to the sinister barn than he had ever dreamed. Now that is Mysterious Isles, and that is actually under our fantasy, and I think have a look at the cover and you may get it instantly gives you a feeling of the kind of book it is. It's very, I think, almost surrealistic. So a very alternate world with magic and creatures, and it all set in a hardware store, or shall we say battling hardware stores. So very cool. There
you go. Well, as Ian's probably just come back from Bunnings, I think that's very topical. I might be able to interest him in that book.
I think so. So Mysterious Isles by B.J. Hilton, which you you will find under
So
our
see, I
fantasies.
thought Mysterious Isles as in ISLE, but no,
Ah,
it's
no.
Mysterious AIS.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
there
I think
you go.
look, I haven't had the pleasure of reading the book yet, but I do remember the conversation with BJ Hilton about what he was hoping it to be, and judging by the cover, I can just say, as I sit here in my little cabana drinking coffee, I would say my guess is it's a bit of a psychedelic Bunnings adventure. So that's how I put. I may be wrong, but the cover definitely gives.
So yeah, apologies, BJ, if we got that. BG, if we got that wrong, we will definitely correct it.
Well, it's definitely an alternative reality. We could say that. But moving on to the next title, we have this is under our young adult genre, and this book is called Bunker 10 by author J.A. Hhenderson. Now, Bunker 10 reads as follows. Beneath Pinewood Research Facility is Bunker 10, holding the two most dangerous creatures on Earth, a little girl and a mouse. And they've escaped. Now 7 brilliant teenagers battle increasingly bizarre and horrific dangers, trapped in an experimental underground research facility that is descending into chaos. Now, this book was winner of the Royal Mail Award, shortlisted for the Waterstones Children's Book Prize, the Angus Book Award, the South Lancashire Book Award, the RED Award, the Stockport Book Prize, and the Adaptable Prize. So that is Bunker 10 by J.A. Hhenderson under a young adult. If you look into J.A. Hhenderson a bit, you'll see he has done a whole range of books. So definitely hope to get a few more titles and maybe even have him on the show because he's a very prolific writer and the book sounds very cool for the young readers.
There you go.
Now, of course, we have a special guest who was so gracious to join us and sit back with a drink in our writer's lounge, and that was none other than Claire Roden. And Claire has a brand new book that's been listed on our website as well, and that book is called How to Survive Your Magical Family. We have listed it under our middle grade, but as you'll hear, Claire will explain a little bit more about that, which ages it's going to be, who are going to really love the book. But the book is pretty cool. How to Survive Your Magical Family reads as follows. Toby's family is no ordinary family. They are magical, talented and special. His father is a surgeon. His older sister is a lawyer. But his dad is also a renowned wizard, as is his uncle, and his sister can influence people. His mum was special too, but she had to leave. Toby isn't any of those things. The only special thing he can do is pretty useless. Toby can talk with cats. When Toby and his sister rescue a family of abandoned cats on the side of the road, and Toby spots a mysterious silver bangle in the gutter, everything changes. So that is How to Survive Your Magical Family, and
It's so
very
good.
yeah. I think people will definitely stay tuned for the Writers' Lounge coming later in the show because Claire gives a little bit of an insight into a very unique inspiration for the book.
Can I just say that I suspect that being able to understand and talk to cats may have its downfalls because, the looks that you get sometimes from cats, if say, you stupid human, what the hell are you thinking? Or so, we might find that we feel a bit put upon by some cats because, yes, they are quite discerning, let's just say.
Yes, but then we could be disappointed as well. It could be, I like food.
Yes,
I want
Bunny,
outside.
give more food. Yeah, that's
I want
true.
inside. I want outside. I want inside. But you're supposed to be a god, cat. I like food. No! No, I think you're right. There could be some interesting revelations if we could talk to cats.
There you go. Yeah.
But I'd like to finish up with just for all of our book lovers out there about some new titles. If you are a romance fan, if you love settling down with a good romance book, and if you love a good romance series, then I'm happy to announce that author Faye Hall has been so gracious to submit her Sins of the Virtuous collection series. I don't know which way you'd put it, under our romance genre. Sins of the Virtuous has 7 volumes, and they are as follows. Book 1, Lust and Chastity. Ooh. Book 2, Indulgence and Temperance. Book 3, Avarice and Charity. Book 4, Apathy and Vigour. Book 5, Wrath and Mercy. Book 6, Envy and Favour. And Book 7, Vanity and humility. So very very powerful little words they use for romance, and quite an interesting. I had the pleasure of reading the description of all of the books, and as far as romance goes, they sound quite a little bit more. There's quite a lot of mystery involved as well. So I thought I'll just read you one of the descriptions of book 1, which is Lust and Chastity, to give our readers out there a taste of what that might be in store. Because if it's romance, obviously we both know that romance readers are very passionate and love their genre. And if you pick up a book, then what better pleasure of knowing that there's 7 volumes in this series. So the first one, Lust and Chastity, reads as follows. Would you surrender the pleasure of lust to become a lady of chastity? Darian Avery followed Caitlin Sinclair from England to Australia, memories of their intense love affair fresh in his mind. When they arrive, he quickly learns he isn't the only man in this new country who's infatuated with the breathtaking blonde-haired beauty. Women are turning up dead, victims to the worst kinds of depraved acts, women who fit Caitlin's description, and every clue to the murderer leads back to Darian's family. Frantic to save Caitlin's life, he sends her up north to her family, hoping to free her from the murderer's grasp. But she never makes it there. When he receives word that her dead body has been found, his heart breaks and he throws himself into a life of debauchery and sin as punishment for failing to save the woman he loves. When yet another murder occurs, Darian believes he will be accused of the crime, so he flees. He finds himself in Jarvisfield, the same town where Caitlin's family lives. But he soon learns that the murderer, who has been butchering blonde-haired, green-eyed women, has followed him there. He's in for even more of a shock when he discovers that his beloved Caitlin is not dead and has in fact been living in Jarvisfield for months. This time he will protect her. However, Caitlin is having none of it. She believes Darian has betrayed her and she won't fall for him again. No longer is she his lustful lover, but rather a lady of chastity, determined to live an independent life, one without Darian. So, there we go. And that's just book 1, yes. Lust and Chastity. So, right. I suspect that could probably, I think I might have to be listing these in under our mystery genres as well. There's so much in there. But that is by, romance author Faye Hall. So, if you are a romance book lover, definitely jump in, have a look. I think if you fall in love with the first book, then woohoo, your spring is set to be delivered with a whole range of tales, because there's all 7 volumes there. So, yes, there we go. That is some of the new listings on the Australian Book Lovers website as I sit here with my feet getting tanned under the beautiful, hopefully soon, summer sun of the Reader's Cafe.
Nice.
Now that we've got the energy from the cafe.
Yes, restored with the cuppa.
Caffeine. Yes. Today's wonderful guest, maybe Veronica, can you let our listeners know about the superstar opportunity that we had for this wonderful episode?
Absolutely. So Michelle Scott Tucker and I follow each other on social media, and I saw that she had ghostwritten with Aaron Farso his memoir, So Far, So Good. So I reached out to Michelle and said, we'd love to chat to you and Aaron, and she said, yes, that would be fine. Unfortunately, then Aaron got sick, which was no good, and we waited for him to recover. But we had a fabulous chat with he and Michelle, and just brilliant about his memoir. Now, the memoir is about on connection, loss, laughter, and the Torres Strait. And Aaron is a Torres Straight Islander. He's a descendant of the Samu and Kodal clans of Sabai Island. His people are warriors, but storytellers too. So a little bit of a blurb from the book. On his long path to success, from aspiring professional footballer to actor, director and producer, every opportunity Aaron Farso had, there were setbacks and heartache. He was 6 when his father and grandfather both died. His fiercely proud mother and even fiercer grandmother dug deep to raise Aaron and his brothers. Belief in himself as a warrior, literally and metaphorically, made him into a fighter, for better and for worse. A month into his second marriage, and just as his acting career was flourishing, his new wife took her own life. In the dark years that followed, Aaron eventually found strength and meaning in his family and in his beloved Torres Strait community. In So Far So Good, he talks frankly about love, pain, making mistakes and finding happiness again, as well as the impacts of racism and the challenges of remote communities. It's a rich and vivid reflection on life told with generosity, humour, emotion and optimism. So there you go. Brilliant book. We had a lovely, lovely chat with both Aaron and Michelle. So let's jump into it.
I think so, and what a, I guess, what a beautifully balanced opportunity. Because Michelle being, so thoughtful and chatting and revealing about the process of, stepping into, perhaps a world that she's not familiar with. So that was a great insight. And then, of course, on the other side, you've got Aaron, who, as you're about to discover, is probably energy personified, and so your speakers might crackle a little from all the energy. But no, what an opportunity!
Generous bloke, really good.
Yeah, fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, all listeners of the Australian Book Lovers podcast, really proud and happy to introduce this wonderful interview because it was a really special opportunity, and I think you're going to love it.
So welcome, book lovers, to an absolutely brilliant and very exciting author interview, because we've gone double tonight. We have with us Aaron Farso and Michelle Scott Tucker. So I'm going to start with Michelle. Michelle's the author of Elizabeth MacArthur, A Life at the Edge of the World, a biography of the woman who established the Australian wool industry, although her husband received all the credit. Elizabeth MacArthur was shortlisted for the 2019 New South Wales State Library Ashurst Business Literature Prize and the 2019 Chas Australia Book Prize. And on her website, Michelle describes herself as much funnier on Twitter. So good evening, Michelle.
Good evening, Veronica, and it's true, I am much funnier on Twitter.
I liked, you can be really pithy in 180 characters, can't you? So, that is all good. Michelle, can you tell us where you are coming from today? Whose land are you on tonight?
I'm on the country of the Judge Wurrung in central Victoria, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Excellent. And I should have introduced myself, Veronica Strachan, but I am on the land of the Wurrung, just down the road from Michelle on the Macedon Ranges, or Gabor, as is known to the local people. Can I say also welcome to Aaron Farso? So Aaron's a Torres Straight Islander film producer, director, screenwriter and actor, known for his roles in Remote Area Nurse as a nurse. That was one I had to watch. East West 101, The Straits, Black Comedy, and as the presenter of Straight to the Plate and Going Places with Ernie Tingo, which I also loved, Aaron. So Aaron's the executive director of his own film and television production company, Lone Star, which created the documentary series Blue Water Empire about the history of the Torres Strait Islands. Aaron's a board member of Screen Queensland and belongs to several government and not-for-profit advisory committees. He holds a master's degree of film business from the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. Good evening, Aaron.
He's on mute.
Oh, no!
Good evening, Veronica. I had myself on mute.
All right.
Good evening, mate. It's such a pleasure to be here. And once again, thank you for extending the invitation. And I'm sitting in Meanjin of the Turrbal Nation in around the southeast area of Brisbane. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I pay my respects to their elders, past, emerging. And also I acknowledge my own Torres Strait elders of the Zenith region, all past elders and emerging. So eso.
Excellent. Now, Aaron, before I introduce our co-host, I just want to say that in your bio, you've forgotten a really important role. So you are actually also the voice of Old Dog in Little J and Big Cuz, which my great-grandnieces and nephews tell me is the best thing you've ever done.
Yeah, look, I think, there's nothing like, connecting with the younger demographic and also being, an important, I guess, platform, for our kids to engage. And as we all have been kids, we can kind of think back to those prolific television shows that really kind of, that were quite poignant and they were quite informative. And when I think back, it was like, there was shows like, Monkey Magic, Play School, Sesame Street, those type of characters, Tom and Jerry and all that kind of stuff. So I think But I think in this day and age, it was such an honor and privilege to be part of the First Nations or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander animation, production of this kind of magnitude. Yeah. I mean, there had been previously, but on this kind of commercial kind of entity, this was the first. This was the first time of this type of magnitude in terms of really kind of upping the scale, and where it's kind of resonated kind of across the entire landscape, into also crossed over into, mainstream. It's absolutely it's wonderful. It's a wonderful project to be a part of, and I'm extremely proud of it.
Yeah, as you should be. So, before we get too much further in, good evening to my co-host.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And, this is a pretty cool damn opportunity, I must say. Michelle, Aaron, thank you so much. Thank you both of you for jumping on the show. And, look, I know our time is of the essence, so there's a lot of things I want to ask I'm not going to be able to get to, but the first thing I will have to ask is rugby player, bouncer, author in Victoria, interested, obviously, in the origins of the wool industry. How is it that we are talking to you both this evening about such what is, I'm sure, a very profound book?
Yeah, look, I think how we got together was that I was actually pitched the idea through an agent, through the agent actually that we both share, and I'm not a author as such, and more of a known as a screenwriter than anything. So when the proposition was pitched as that to write my own memoirs, I said that basically, isn't that for old fellas to write? But seriously, it never actually entered my mind. So cut a long story short, once I agreed to really sign up for it and really kind of, commit to it, which I will say it took about 3 to 4 years for me to really commit.
Oh, wow.
What
do you think was holding you back?
Mate, there's a lot of things that I didn't want to, perhaps open up to. And there was, once you read the book, Darren, you will see why I deliberated for 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I felt that if I was going to tell this book, I needed to, it needed to have a feminine touch to it because, otherwise, it didn't need, I already have a strong alpha voice. So I needed someone who was going to offset that, but also understand that but also bring that, like that feminine touch, to the storyline, because I think, if it was going to cross over, and this is the first time that a Torres Strait Islander has been posed the opportunity to commercially or to one and also produce a memoir for the commercial marketplace, I felt it had to have a woman's touch in general anyway, because why it was so important to me is because I've been raised by two very strong females or mothers, in that being my grandmother and my mother. And so two very strong women. So that voice had to be right. It just didn't have to, I couldn't just have, myself and another male writer. And when we did go down that route, and it just didn't feel right. So when, Michelle presented herself and we had our meeting, basically we just hit it off. And it was the start, I guess, of our journey. And it's one that's, I shared with it was a person, that I shared, so many things with intimately, that in regards to that no one else had, had known about. Otherwise, or who was in that circle at the same time when I was, either recounting those moments in time. So it was an awful lot of amount of trust had to be, built over a short period of time. But we got there, and the astounding thing is that, this was all done over Zoom. It was done during the pandemic. It was done over in the 2.5, 3 years. And it's a testimony, what's being produced at the end is a testimony to, Michelle and the way that she was able to kind of capture my voice and the world and the times and the moments that were so profound in my life that I was willing to actually share with the rest of the world.
Well, I congratulate you both on obviously getting the book together, but also doing it at such a difficult time too, and using different mediums, and doing the Zoom meetings as opposed to, I guess, sitting there in the old-fashioned days at a table and day and night and letting things out. But before I know Veronica's got a whole heap of questions, but Aaron, I'm really curious, mate. Before the book was written and now that it has written, if the Aaron now that is moving forward, that I'm talking to today, how different is that person to the Aaron if I met at the bar or a coffee house or on the streets at the same time today, if he hadn't have collaborated with Michelle and written this book? What do you think that transition, that split between the two alternate realities are? What's the Aaron now versus the Aaron that if you didn't get that book out?
Oh, look, I think, the person that's described in terms of the latter of the book is very much me. But in terms of, the where the book starts out from and, the journey that I've been on and the landscape and the setbacks and the flaws that, continually, either, raise their heads or, ankle tap me from time to time. I think that particular person, is, I'd need, a telescope to look back on that person, perhaps, one of those constellation high-end scientific telescopes to look back on that person.
That's a good way
because I'm
putting it.
Yeah, so that particular person, it's. I mean, he's still there, I guess, but but I'm not that person, that I was, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, nor would I be that same person 10 years ago. And what also encouraged me, because I knew that we were going to touch into some really kind of sensitive areas that I didn't want to, self-sabotage the process, and knowing the dark places that I'd been through previously, that it was time for me to really kind of, go and whilst, going through this process, was to also manage it by, seeking professional help and talking myself through that. So, and so that was the positive that came, one of the many positives that have come out of this collaboration and telling my story was, once and for all, I've actually gone and sought, professional help in around, whether that was, the post of, the PTSD that I've suffered, or whether that was, the reoccurring rounds of, post grief, at certain times of the year around, whether that was an anniversary date around my wedding or my wife's death or suicide, the time of the marking her suicide or the taking of her life. So, I guess, the positive, one of the many positives was that now that, I'm engaged in with a counsellor regularly. And, I think it's, should have done this ages ago.
Very good. And once you start to do that reflection, it's amazing. You start, peeling those layers of onion layers back, and there's lots of goodness underneath, isn't there?
And it's a lot cheaper than to self-medicate on alcohol. That you just keep filling up, and at least it's a $120 lesson per week, rather than well, I won't even go there until.
Wait, you've obviously done the maths, mate.
My alcohol bill is up there.
All right, Michelle, let's have a chat with you about the ghostwriting process. So you've written a biography before, but of course Elizabeth MacArthur was, sometime in the past, and you didn't have her on Zoom to talk to. How did you approach, Aaron's story? It is such a deep and personal story. What did you do to get yourself ready, and how did you tease out the gems and create that trust with him?
Oh, we started off by being clear about what we wanted to do. So Aaron had some really important things that he wanted to say, and I had some ideas about how we'd use his personal story as a framework for fleshing out those bigger themes and ideas. So we wanted, if Aaron had just wanted to talk about himself, I don't think I would have been interested, but he wanted to talk about the Torres Strait, he wanted to talk about culture, he wanted to talk about racism and trauma and climate change and a whole lot of really interesting issues. And so we used his story basically as a way to bring the reader through and to introduce them to some of those wider issues. So that made it really interesting from the beginning. And then because we didn't know each other very well at all to begin with, I set up a process he could trust. And through that process, he came to trust me. So I made it clear that whatever he told me was confidential between the two of us. Mm-hmm. Whatever we then got written down on paper was again confidential between the two of us, and we could to and fro it, and he could decide what went in and what didn't go in. But no one would see that until he had signed off on it and had read it and looked at it. And so within that bubble of trust, it was just us talking to each other and us writing things down for each other, knowing that no one else could see it. Mm-hmm. And we met week after week after week, built up that trust that we had. And I can tell you that some of our interviews were pretty intense, and some of them left me reeling when Aaron was talking about his wife's suicide, his own suicidal impulses, about violence, about some of the trauma that he suffered. But I can tell you too that I'd come out of the meeting sometimes and my family would say, all we could do was hear you laughing and swearing. That's all we could hear. And because Aaron tells a funny story and he's an actor, he does all the voices. So those funny stories are in there too, because like Aaron, his story is light and dark. It's full of interesting things, it's intense, but it's really compelling. And so my challenge was to get that in what interested me, to get that on the page, but also to get Aaron's voice on the page. He's got a very distinctive voice. He speaks like the regional Queenslander that he is. And so it was really important to me to capture that on the page so that that also demonstrated the essence of the man. So in that sense, it was a really interesting process, and much more interesting, I find, than doing a biography of someone who's been dead for 200 years, because I never got to find out what she thought about anything, whereas I get to know what Aaron thinks about everything, which is endlessly interesting.
Would you go straight again?
No.
Tell us how you really feel, Michelle.
I wouldn't, because this process has been so fabulous.
Yeah.
It has just been an absolute highlight and an absolute joy, and I can't imagine replicating it with anyone else.
Some magic is designed just to happen once.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's absolutely true. And I can't imagine having this experience again, and I don't think I want to try to do it again. I don't think it'd be as good as second time round. So I've enjoyed this process immensely, but no, I don't think I'll do it again. I think the next circus will be my circus, not someone else's.
Can I ask you then, is in a similar vein to what Darren asked Aaron about, Darren and Aaron, there we go, that's got the rhyming happening. How has writing this story changed you, your views of the world, your views of yourself?
Oh, it's changed me incredibly, because I've learnt so much from Aaron. I've learnt about, in terms of craft, I'm a different person as a writer than I was at the beginning of the book, but most writers are. You get to 80,000 words down on the page and you've got to be better at it by the end of it. But I also learnt about class and race. I learnt about how white I am. I never had to think about how white I was before, but Aaron has to think about how black he is every day, and take steps to work around the barriers that puts in front of him. And so that made me think about my own place and about colonisation and about racism and how all that works. And I was able to ask Aaron very frank questions about that sort of thing, because whatever I asked him, any question at all, even the ones that had me thinking inside, I can't possibly ask this sort of thing, Aaron would always answer it. He was so incredibly generous with his time and his thoughts about things. So I learnt heaps along the way, and not least about the Torres Strait, which is an area that I know very little about, and that I think most Australians generally know very little about. And it's just sort of this hanger on. You say Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander as a rote way of thinking, but the Torres Strait is its own really special place. And I was able to travel up there and to meet the people and meet Aaron's friends and family. And so this whole process has changed me in very deep ways.
Fantastic. Thank you. Aaron, can I ask you, I'm going to dive in, Darren, and ask Aaron about racism. Given that today Australia is focused on the referendum, we're looking at voice, we're looking at treaty, we're looking at truth-telling, individual states and territories are looking at local treaties, and all of that is kind of stirring, and there's discussions and conversations, and in a similar way to what Michelle said, a lot of white people are going, what? How does that work? What are we doing? What's it all about? As a black man, tell us your story or your experience a little bit about racism and where you think the future is in terms of those things.
Look, I think, the country, unfortunately, there's so much to celebrate about this country, but there's also, unfortunately, it's so systemic, it's so entrenched that it's become such the norm that, now in 2022, I think, we're beginning to wisen up in terms of, what's kosher and what's not. And I think, to certain, to everyday legislations or to the way that, our communities have been established. I mean, these are all embodiments or products of, either racial legislation or the product of racial decision making. And I guess as a black man, I've just had to navigate through what has been established, and it's almost like, and also at the same time, wanting to aspire to be successful, wanting to, have a voice, and wanting to, create wealth so I can, not only assist, myself for my own wants and benefits, but also to take care of my own immediate family and extended family. So, but that is also predetermined and determined through the landscape of racism, and it exists everywhere. It is just everywhere, and it's either, it's almost, it is so casually thrown around, in casual conversation and as jokes. And look, I grew up in the 80s when, after losing my grandfather and father at 2 weeks apart at the age of 6, and I saw, at the time, I mean, women weren't, barely had rights in the state of Queensland at the time, let alone black women. And in the 80s, being a single parent and not understanding or not even knowing that, she's a single mother, but, her actually spouses passed away and she's actually a widow. Not even, but just assuming that this woman was a black woman and a single parent by choice, and the looks that my mother used to get, the way that my mother was treated, the way that my grandmother and mother were both treated, being single parents, throughout the 80s, and how I was treated as being raised in a single parent household, and the assumption was that I never had a father. And so, well, how do you think I came along? Do you think our women make them ourselves? You know what I mean? So so it was, in terms of like, racism has been a constant. Racism has been a constant for me. But also there's change, and I've seen changes. I've seen acts of compassion between white and black, and then there are also the moments that have been quite profound, not only from my own family perspective, but also from a from a greater, the wider community perspective. It's only when we have been when only we have come together and looked at each other in, as with humanity, that, we've actually, we break down those differences that make us, whether that be black or white, because then when we look at each other through the eyes of humanity, we can see each other for who we really are, and ultimately, without getting warm or fuzzy, we're ultimately brothers and sisters, and we all ultimately are wanting and striving for the same thing, but unfortunately there's an imbalance. There has been an imbalance. There has been equality and inequality. And I think moving forward as we move towards treaty, especially in the state of Queensland, well, I think, as much as a lot of us are angry of the atrocities in the past, and that will come out through treaty. I think to get to treaty, there's a process of truth telling. And the truth telling will then give way to the healing, and the healing will then give way to the discussion of treaty and what that looks like. And when I say that there'll be a process of truth telling, I mean that's going to be an opportunity for both white and black individuals, families, organization, clan groups, communities, statehoods will be able to, because we all have, if you were to draw a line down the sand, and we've all got an opportunity or have an opportunity or a story of truth to tell, and I think whereby there are truth telling of atrocities that are just simply unavoidable. But we've also got to make that a safe place for those who want to tell the truth on behalf of their forebearers as well. That, from our non-Indigenous counterparts, there will, for them to be able to feel safe and to be able to tell truth about the atrocities of their forebearers, and know that, it's not here of a blame to shame, but it's an opportunity to tell the truth of the atrocities. And these are things that are highly unavoidable, but yet we create a safe space where we can come together and tell the truth. And it's about our truth challenge from both sides, and whereby we can now, open up the doors to healing. We can now, walk together and reframe, have this conversation of treaty where we're reframing our relationship, reframing our relationship with our non-Indigenous counterparts, and moving forward, whether that be, the betterment of the future of Queensland or Western Australia or South Australia. But therefore, this leads into the greater conversation around the voice to Parliament and the greater conversation around the referendum. And it's all happening very quickly. It's all happening over, in a quick period of time. But we know, as we know, as men and women of Australia, that, that there is yet a lot of work to be done. But we must be open for that work to happen. And the leadership has to come from the government, but it also has to come from the grassroots level. It's almost like a three-pronged approach that or a multifaceted approach needs to be engaged from a government, one from community, and one from where the community of Indigenous and non-Indigenous come together to, whether they set up, statutory bodies for these treaty institutions to exist, for these really important conversations to take form, and it's really important because I think, Australia as a country, Australia has not yet lived up to its potential, and until we really kind of delve deep into our history, know our history, face up to our history, own our history, begin the healing process, that we move together as one people under one, as a united front as Australians. And the thing is that we've got the oldest living culture, cultures in the world of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. That is also the Australian identity. That is the Australian identity. That is the Australian, that is the foundation. That is the richness of this country. And that is also what we as Australian citizens are inherited to. That is your culture and that is your history too. That is the benefit of being Australian. You get to tap into the oldest living, culture in the world that has an unbroken connection to this country and the islands of the Torres Strait.
Yeah.
But look, in regards to, in terms of wiping racism off the face of the earth, I feel that'll never happen. But certainly we can move together in this country, in terms of closing that divide between, white and black and seeing each other as Australians and as one nation. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was pretty powerful words there, Aaron. And I love the way you said, reframing, the whole idea and the whole relationship, reframing the relationship. That I think is such an important step forward. And you're absolutely right. There's celebration as well. We have to celebrate.
I mean, there's so much to celebrate. And I guess for me, a part of this as well, I will add, and I will finish off, I will add that, there is, this is all about truth telling. This is all about, treaty is about our, the first initial stage, the part to treaty is truth telling, to engage the healing, then we get to treaty. Well, I could never ask anyone to tell, in terms of, be compelled to tell their truth without me first telling the truth about my own life experiences and my own journey. And true change comes from, from the individual. Everything starts from the individual. And if you want the world to change, one must first change himself. Ask not, of those that, you can't give yourselves, so I think it's a case where, and it was just by default that, we're moving on this path in terms of this state conversation around treaty, but also this national conversation, referendum, and how, I've been impacted through, colonization and so forth, but how my book and my story leans into these discussions. But for me, it's about, I first must tell my truth about my journey, about the things that I'm not proud of, the things that I also am passionate about, but the flaws and the setbacks that I've had in my life as well. To put myself under the microscope was extremely challenging. One of the most challenging experiences that I've ever done in my life over a period of 2.5 years. That's what we did, and that's what we did for 2.5. I mean, it was just an intense block. And look, it's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. If you're willing to, really kind of deep dive and look at yourself and face yourself and really kind of question and open to question, those decisions, or even just look and peer back into, what makes you. Yeah, it can be an exceptionally profound and life-changing journey. But I will say it's not for everybody. But for those who embark on such a journey, they'll know what I'm talking about.
It's interesting. You use the word truth, and then you also said it's not a journey that everyone may embark upon. And, there is, I guess in one way we could say that, at this point in time and with relation to the blood that flows through your people, you might be considered a warrior today. But I'm wondering how much of, how much does truth play in the formation of a warrior, and what do you think? What are some other elements that, in your understanding, your belief, that makes a warrior, and what elements of a warrior today is something that we can all strive for? Do you think that will help bring some solutions to some of these issues?
I don't think it's just living your truth. just living your truth, living to your core values. Living your values, and in terms of those core values of respect, dignity, integrity, honesty. Those true principles that we all strive to live by, or hope to try and live by. I mean, that's they're those. I think they're quite common across the board. The manifestation and of living that truth each day. I mean, really, it's, and I guess those flaws are what keeps you humble. My flaws are what keeps my feet firmly on the ground, because I know the flaws that I have. I know my flaws, and that those flaws are what keeps me grounded, because I know I can't get too far ahead of myself. I like to get there's the impulsive nature that I have, and I know that those flaws are there for a reason, because without those flaws, what one can easily kind of default to ego, and once the ego kicks in, the game's over. You're done. You're defeated, because ego is the comes as a good guy, but he's really the bad guy.
Well, I reckon you would have had to throw a few egos out in King's Cross over your time too.
Yeah, but I had a pretty inflated ego back then too. So
well, I think anybody out in that era, that time, and that atmosphere, yeah, I think it was a disco of egos, wasn't it? Really.
Oh no, mate! I can tell you there was an army of egos. Battalions, mate, battalions.
Michelle, can I ask you a little bit about your creative process and what is kind of, I guess, next for you? And is there going to be any crossover to screenwriting? As Aaron's got screenwriting and production and film and TV. Are you tempted to slip into his world at all?
Oh, look, I'm tempted, but Aaron's hardly been begging me to join him there. So maybe I should take the hint.
Okay.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
Look, Aaron and I do enjoy working together, and we have lots of projects on the go currently, and I suspect we'll continue to work together into the future. He keeps talking about a sequel. God help me.
Oh.
So maybe we'll go there.
Yeah.
I am interested in screenwriting. I'm interested in potentially moving into fiction, which I haven't tried before. That's kind of an interesting world for me. And I'm just looking at a whole lot of different ideas at the moment. I'm in a very happy place in that our publisher's really happy with us. Mm-hmm. She's happy to look at anything that I might write in future, which is a privileged place for any writer to be. And so I'm just enjoying looking at a whole lot of different ideas at the moment and going down a few different rabbit holes. And if any, producers that I know want to option my book, we'll see how we go.
Very good. Aaron, you also teach young film, want to be producers / authors, etc. For young'uns in the Torres Strait Island. Will you be adding writing to your repertoire there?
No, look, I think I know my lane, and I'm no look in terms of author as such. I think I'd hand that over. I'd certainly set that up and see if I could earn some coin off it.
Yeah.
But
you're a producer, definitely.
Michelle would be the one that would be doing the hard
yards. Very good. Now, tell us, what are your messages for young people in the Torres Strait? Because I've seen some of those beautiful shots up there, and you're doing your a little bit of culinary arts, and looking at things like Top End Wedding with Miranda Taps, or the beautiful shots up there. It's kind of unspoiled. Do you really want to tell people to go up there and trash that beautiful place, or is there a way? Do you think Torres Strait Islanders currently have a good handle on who they let in and how they offer tourism and cultural exposure, I guess, is some of the things there?
Yeah, look, certainly, most certainly. I think, that's something that our people, whether that you look at Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander people in general, just haven't been able to have a real play in the Australian tourism space, full stop. And I think, certainly there's been operators that have engaged in the space and have, taken knowledge of sites and areas and places, and basically we've seen the same old story where most Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders engaged in the tourism agency have just been the face of, or there's been a fair bit of blackcladding that have gone on since the big rush of Crocodile Dundee, they put Australia on tourism on the map, and First Nations or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are yet to really kind of engage. And when we do engage, it's almost at a level where I feel that there was so much reins put around us and on us. So it's about, again, working within those constraints. So. To answer your question, I think that, basically, if we're running the show, we're by default, or it'll have, we'll be extremely, we'll design business models and business plans where, one, it'll be culturally safe, it'll be also eco-safe. It'll be, we're forever, watching, the constant, impact on people, on country. And we do it in a way where it's, one, again, it'll be conducive to maintaining and preserving not only our cultural practices, but also one where, it would also elevate knowledge and awareness around, the environmental changes and the importance to looking after country and our connection to country. And I think, why we're so intrinsically connected to our land, sea and cosmos that, if we were to lead our own tourism space our own way, by our own, for our own, I think you'd have one. It'd give a lot of other punters or tourism consumers a lot more bang for buck. But I think especially with that cultural immersion, but also whereby the country actually speaks to you, and at times you need to be pointed, when you're pointed out these things, how the country moves, how it speaks. How it evolves, how it changes, from its season, how it's, it goes from one form to another. I mean, once you understand that, and once you're given those types of experiences, they're lifelong, impactful experiences that, in my experience, when I've seen punters have such cultural immersions, have it had changed their lives profoundly forever. Yeah. So it's and that's our and that's our magic. That's our connection to a country. How we relate, how we speak to country, how we converse, and how that conversation and that relationship is unbroken. And it's not, I'm not talking about Harry Potter shit either. I'm talking about real connection. I'm talking as the connection that you have to your mother and your grandmother. It is the same connection that we have to our country and our sea country and our cosmos. So I think if we were to lead the way, I think it would be far more beneficial for the consumers. Two, it'd be obviously return business, economically viable as well as commercially viable, but also it'd be looking and caring for country. So you'd be able to strike off a number of key pillars that, when we talk about the impact of tourism, that is something, the way that we care and the way we look after country it'd be something that'd be holistic, and it's always a holistic approach when it's from an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander perspective.
But you're also in a really unique position, and I know we're running out of time, so I'm really quickly curious, because I sat through your VR documentary on Paruma Island, so I think it was called Every King Tide. That was really, it was really profound, because it was such a, this tiny little island, what is it, less than 2 kilometres long, I think it was, and really represents humanity in one beautiful little snapshot, doesn't it? We have to get along together. You got nature encroaching on the sands and slowly changing and taking away the land, and that's also a bit of a fault of all of us in essence. But also using that media in a different way, and giving people the opportunity to experience it a little bit without having to without being able to get there. But I'm just wondering, a couple of things. One, is that something you're going to investigate a little bit more from a filmmaker perspective? And two, what do you think we could learn from the people of Paruma?
Oh, look, I think you could learn so much. Learn about life, learn about connection, learn about, there is so much you could learn from the people of the Torres Straits, in particular the people of Paruma. Their resourcefulness, the resilience, the love and connection that they have to their country, but also how they work as community, as they work as one and as one people, and it's almost like a one mind, one heart kind of approach, and as a community, and that even though that the rising sea levels and the threat of the sea is imminent, that how this community bands together and to see how they best kind of look at whether it's lobbying government for for sea walls or for better for those emission reductions that have and the whole gamut that has profoundly impacted our climate change and our rising sea levels. But I think it's certainly a tool. The VR tool is certainly, or the power of film and television is such a powerful tool to be able to tell stories, convey stories, but it also goes towards, positive imagery as well. Be able to see, your own people, your own story, your own narrative on screen has profound impacts, because when I was growing up, I was a West Indies cricket team of the 80s. I was a big West Indies cricket team fan, because they looked and they acted and they walked and talked and they were so cool, and they looked like my uncles, and
they were pretty cool.
They were pretty cool. And
did you have a foil sticker?
I did have a foil sticker.
Nice.
I know where you're going with that one, but they were doing things so successfully, and they were kicking ass, and they were heroes, and they were winning, and they were being successful, and people were championing those successes, and that was for me. And as a kid, they looked and they represented me, even though they were from the West Indies, and I guess that was a question that I was always posed: why are you going for the West Indies? They're not Australian. I said, yeah, but they look like me. You know what I mean? And that's saying something. Now, that's huge. That's extremely powerful when you're hearing that coming from a 6, 7-year-old or 8-year-old kid.
Definitely.
Seeing yourself, and you are doing a tremendous amount to put young Torres Strait Islanders and the stories from the Torres Strait, the culture, the food, all of those things out in the world so that more people can share it. So, Aaron, our time is up. I'd love to talk to you for hours more, but who knows? You never know. We might get you back again with
we're just getting started. What's going on? Cancel plans, Aaron.
And I've just realised that I'm just hogged all the time. Michelle, you should have done your work. Damn it.
Yeah,
have to leave at 8. I'll keep talking when you're
Yeah,
gone.
we might say goodbye to Aaron, and we'll just hang on to Michelle for just a little bit longer. So,
I'm happy for you too. I'm happy for you too.
We'll tell them all your secrets.
yeah, very good. So, Aaron Parso, thank you so much.
Read the book.
Yeah, get out and read the book. We'll tell people where they can buy it at the end, so we won't waste time talking about that. Been really lovely to talk to you, Aaron. So, on to your next chat. See you again.
Thank you so much, Veronica and Darren. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you once again for extending the invitation. It's extremely appreciated, and I look forward to reconnecting with you at some stage down the near track.
Sounds good.
Have a good one. Ciao.
All right, cheers.
Awesome to chat with you. All the best moving forward. Take care.
Ciao.
So, Michelle, now that you've got the microphone, what secrets do you need to tell us about Aaron that he wouldn't let you? Oh, I think there's not many secrets that he hasn't shared.
He really hasn't.
Yeah.
He, in that book, he does the emotional deep dive. He really, we used to joke about that Hemingway quote about all you have to do to write a book is open up a vein, bleed on the page.
Yeah.
And he really did just bleed on the page. And some of it we had endless conversations. Do you want to include this? Do you really want to include this? Are you really sure that you want to include this? And he went away and did some really long and hard thinking about what to include and not to include in the book. And in the end, it's all in there. It's all in there. The darkness, his grief, his horror, his shame about some of the things he's done, and rightfully so, he should be ashamed. It's all there.
And it's far from anything we could say easy, because we're all three of us are writers here, and so we know that it's hard enough just to write a story and have someone read it, let alone put those deep, dark, fragments of your soul on paper.
Absolutely. And people ask us, was it really a 50-50 split with the writing? And I think as a writer, you'll both know that writing's not sitting at the keyboard tapping away like Kermit the Frog. A lot of writing is what happens when you're walking the dog. It's that emotional power. It's thinking things through. It's the structure. And in this book, the emotional power is all Aaron. It's all his story and his willingness to put it all out there and to discuss it, the good and the bad, his ideas for the future. And I'm making it sound really gloomy, and it's not. You've heard Aaron. He's just an optimist and an enthusiast. And his book reflects that as well. He takes us down into the darkness and then brings us back up with his optimism and his enthusiasm for the future and his plans for working in the industry and to the benefit of his community. He's just astounding. He really is.
And I suspect he's, obviously his voice has come out thanks to the collaboration with yourself, and he is definitely full of energy. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of dark stuff, but it turns to a very positive, outcome. What about yourself, Michelle? What drew you to writing in general? How did that become a part of your life and lead you down, all those weird roads to right now sitting on a podcast talking about a book you collaborated on?
Fun part. I was a reader, like most writers. I was that kid who read all the books and hung out in the library and was an omnivorous reader. And I sort of liked the idea of writing, but I didn't really have anything much to say in my teens and 20s, nothing that I felt was important to say. It wasn't until I was in my 30s, really, that I stumbled across Elizabeth MacArthur's story and thought, here's something I do really want to talk about how Australian women farmers have been misrepresented in Australian history, and I wanted to take her and hold her up into the light and bring her out of the darkness where she potentially was. And to an extent, that's what I've done with Aaron's story as well. The Torres Strait is such a little-known part of Australian culture, but a really important part of Australian culture. And I'm hoping that with Aaron's book, again, we'll lift it up into the light and to show people what an amazing place it is, what an amazing culture it is, and what amazing people it produces.
And it could be, isn't it fun? Isn't it funny, the irony? Well, maybe it's not irony. Maybe that's not the correct word to use, but we'll use irony for the moment. The irony is that maybe it is, the oldest living culture on the planet, and I guess the rise in our recognition of that, and the integration in our society. We've just come out of this weird, COVID thing. And honestly, it feels like for the first time I can remember, it's state v state, like Western Australia does this thing, Queensland does this thing, SA does this thing, Victoria does this thing, and we're really fragmented. And maybe this is the catalyst that we need to bring everyone together. And that is recognise that we've got such a reason. Yes, we've got to face some hard truths. We've got to recognise some of the, viciously bloody and disturbing and just catastrophically horrible parts of the colonisation, some of the history there. But at the same time, balance that with the fact that we also have this unique ability or opportunity to celebrate us integrating that into the society that is today, and that will hopefully be just this amazing thread that will bind us all together again. And they're such powerful people and such a powerful voice that I think will eventually, the irony is, maybe unite us. Who knows?
I certainly hope that's true, and I hope that I see that in my lifetime. My experience of working with Aaron and his friends and his family is they've all been extraordinarily generous in the face of my ignorance and faux pas. And willing to show me and to teach me and to help me to learn things. And Aaron's right. Once you get up there on that country, it is life-changing. It is beautiful. It is amazing. And it is entirely possible for white people to connect to that country as well. And sort of no one's stopping us. So I hope you're right, Darren. I hope that in the next little while, as we start a truth-telling process, as we begin these treaty processes, that we do all come together and be incredibly proud of the culture that this country has, the physical land, this culture that it has engendered, because it's truly amazing.
Yeah, it'd be beautiful if we can all just come up with that final end of not the end of the road, but the outcome of all of this is going to be something truly magical. And if everyone has that same vision, it'll work, and hopefully that's the case. But what about when it comes to, so you had the opportunity to go to the Torres Strait. So how did that come about, and what sort of areas did you visit?
I managed in between lockdowns, because I'm based in Victoria. So in between lockdowns, I managed to scoot up to Cairns, where Aaron lives and where most of his family is. And then he and I flew up to the very pointy part of the Cape York Peninsula, which is called the Northern Peninsula area. And there's 5 Indigenous communities up there, 2 Islander communities and 3 Aboriginal communities. And I stayed up there in his grandmother's house and got Aaron to drive me around and talk.
That must be one hell of an experience.
It was unbelievable. It was just so amazing. And then one afternoon, we're sitting on the veranda at his nan's house, and people just kept driving past and rocking up and chatting and talking to Aaron, and you realise what an elder he is within his community, and the respect with which he's held within his community, and also the respect that he bestows on his own elders. I was able to see all that play out in real time. I was able to listen to him swap in and out of languages, because he speaks a couple of languages up there, and so he'd just flick in and out of languages. And then there was one guy turned up on the veranda, and he just sort of went out and started playing in the garden, and Aaron said, we're going to go to his place for a drink afterwards. And it's like, oh yeah, good-o. And we rock over to his place that night, and it turns out that his friend is the head of the cultural dance troupe in Bamaga. And I spent all night in his beautiful garden, his beautiful tropical garden, him and Aaron and I just talking and laughing, and they were telling funny stories about each other. But I was able to pick Francis's brain about cultural dancing, about culture, about spirituality, about country. And again, he just answered my questions gently and kindly into the wee small hours of the night. It was just one of those things you dream about, really. It was fantastic, and all that fed into the book and added depth and meaning into the book. But for me personally, what a privilege, what an absolute privilege to have that experience. It was just wonderful.
So, Michelle, given that this is the first Torres Strait Islander memoir, how do we encourage, open, support more memoirs? I've just finished reading Leslie and Tammy Williams' Not Just Black and White, Queenslander Aboriginal women talking about some of the really difficult things around the Act, and came from Cherbourg and that kind of thing. But how do we encourage or get these stories on paper so that more First Nations people can share that story and bring that beautiful understanding? Because you have had absolutely, as you've said, an incredibly privileged position to be able to go and hear those stories firsthand. But
I
how do we get more?
And Aaron and I have managed to put it into the book, I think, so that other people will get that experience themselves. But we need white middle class readers like us need to buy those books. We need to buy those memoirs. We need to buy those biographies. We need to borrow them from our library. We need to talk about them amongst our friends so that the publishers are confident in publishing them. So that they know that there's an audience out there. We need to talk about them on social media. We need to encourage the publishers to say, this is what we want to read. This is really interesting. These are the stories we want to hear. And it's up to us to use our privilege to do that. And to push them and promote them and say, we want more of these sorts of stories.
Excellent. I will continue to do that. I won't say it's easy, but I will. Because some of those stories, it's like, I have to put it down for a bit. And I think even today, reading Sister Girl, Jackie Huggins' book, and I just had to put it down. And then I thought, well, how privileged am I that I could just put that down? That's not something that Jackie has the opportunity to do. And I thought, oh, God, right.
Exactly
back
right.
Into it, woman. read the next bit.
Exactly. It's not exactly a hardship, is it? But if that's paying the rent, then that's the sort of rent we have to pay. And I'm absolutely comfortable in doing that. As I said, Aaron and I keep working together, and I consider that paying the rent as well. It's a pleasure to work with him. It's no hardship at all. And it's a pleasure to read those memoirs and things. It's no hardship at all. So it behooves us to do it and to get out there and to do more.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Last words, what is your advice for aspiring writers as a successful published writer yourself?
And the co-writer of the we've already mentioned the very first biography of Torres Straight Islander, but that is a pretty epic little situation to find yourself in as a writer.
It's pretty magical, actually.
Yeah, it's history.
With my writing, my advice is just apply your ass to the ergonomic chair and get on with it. But also, often beginner writers used to be told to write what you know, and that's never worked for me. I'm always much more interested in writing towards what I want to know, and using the writing process to find out more about what I want to know, and letting it take me down rabbit holes and on adventures and do interesting things. My Elizabeth MacArthur book took me to England, to a little village that was like Vicar of Dibley, and it was lovely. And I spent a couple of days over there in the company of the women in that village who I still am friends with and who I still talk to. It took me all around Australia doing talks. I've met new people, interesting things. That's where the writing's taking me. As I said, it's not just sitting at the typewriter tapping away.
Yeah.
Writing and researching is an adventure for me, and doing podcasts like this, that's all part of the adventure. Saying yes to writing Aaron's book was a huge adventure, and I must say quite a wild ride from time to time. Quite a wild ride. Yeah. And something I'll remember forever. It's a really important part of my life, and Aaron's a really important part of my life now. So, follow what you want to know, and just say yes. Just say yes and do it.
That's brilliant.
It's a beautiful statement. Just say yes. I like it. Michelle,
tell us where we can find you on social media.
I'm on Twitter at MST. My Twitter handle is MST_rights. But if you search on Michelle Scott Tucker, I think I'm the only one there. I have a website, michellescotttucker.com, and that's got links to both my books and links through to Aaron's material as well. They're probably the best places to find me. I don't hang out too much on other social media, or otherwise I'd have my head in my phone all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, you mentioned earlier on the interview that next step is working on something of your own and your own voice there. And no secrets, of course. We don't want you to reveal anything, but and I know we spoke a little bit off air, but when do you think the readers out there might be able to look forward to the next Michelle release?
That's such a good question, Darren, and I have no idea.
That's usually the correct answer, though. No idea, but I'll rephrase it. Is there something on the way for readers out there?
I'm hoping that there'll be some short pieces out in the world very soon.
Fabulous.
Not least, I'm currently pitching a piece about what I learnt from writing with Aaron and working on with Aaron. So there'll be some short pieces in the short term. Longer term, I can't imagine my next book will be for another year or two at the the fastest. If I do a screenplay with Aaron, and we do have a couple that we're talking about, then maybe they'll come out a bit sooner as well. But having watched him in his industry and how hard it is to get anything up and how much work it takes, and people are involved, so many people are involved. We'll just see. Again, it's all part of the adventure for me. I'm just seeing how things spool out and where writing takes me. 5 years ago, I didn't know any writers. I certainly didn't know any publishers. I was an unpublished nobody from no one from nowhere. And now I've got 2 books out and I get interviewed on podcasts.
Yeah. And the immediate future is basically a T-shirt, isn't it? The sky's the limit from here. It could go any direction, which is the best direction of all.
Look, I hope so. And again, for your aspiring writers, I do have a day job. I work 4 days a week in a day job that I really enjoy, which involves me writing as well.
That's good.
Yeah, but I can quit at 5 o'clock and not think about it too much. And I've got 3 days a week for my writing. My day job is very supportive of my writing. So, it is possible to have to write and be paid to write, but also have time to write. It's tricky, and I'm not very young. It's taken me a while to get here, but it is entirely possible to do that. And so for all aspiring writers out there, yes, you can.
Yeah, it's one hell of a dance. You just got to make sure you pick the right song and dance like no one's looking. It's called life, isn't it? Yeah.
Definitely good advice. Yeah. Michelle, thank you so much for your time. It has been brilliant, and also lovely to catch up to you when Aaron wasn't hogging the conversation. We appreciated his time, but it's been really good to get a little bit more of you in at the end. So thank you for staying on the line and, sharing again so generously of your experience and your skill.
Yeah, you've been amazing,
that's quite
Michelle.
all right. Aaron can talk, and I love to listen to him. So it's an excellent working relationship.
Good. That's good. Yeah, no, he's pretty inspiring for sure. Yeah.
Thank you for this interview. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for reaching out and inviting me on, and for inviting Aaron on. I know he's enjoyed it as well, and it's just a privilege to be able to talk to you about our book. So thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing promoting Australian books. Keep it up.
Please come and talk to us again, Michelle, when your next book's a bestseller.
Yeah.
Or before.
Before.
100%. Yes. But, no, thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time. It's been great.
Legend. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you once again to Aaron Farso and Michelle Scott Tucker for a brilliant, generous and wonderfully interesting conversation about Aaron's memoir, So Far So Good, and about ghostwriting and about topics that are so important. And I just love that Aaron, and really most people who write their memoir, are so generous in sharing the good, the bad and the ugly, and what they learnt from their tales. And amazing to listen to Michelle on how she got into finding Aaron's voice and spent time with his family and his community. I mean, what a brilliant opportunity. So good.
Yeah, it was, and so many powerful messages that Aaron brought to the interview, and as you said, there was still 100 questions. There's so much we would have loved to chat. Obviously, both Michelle and Aaron are super busy, so we thank them so much for their time, because it was an awesome opportunity. But just little things, those little moments in time in the interview where he would talk about certain things, but they were actually really powerful things. Like, for example, this coming together, of Australian people is going to require, really putting truth on the table, and that we're not going to be able to move forward until we put truth on the table. And then once we can put the truth on the table, then that is also including, means looking at ourselves as individuals, as a culture, as a people, and that means looking at the difficult parts. It means discussing the difficult parts, but he mentioned that is also, once that's done, then we can move on to the celebrations, and I think that is the real beautiful message that I got, that I love, the idea of, and the fact that he said, well, how can he expect anybody or any group of people to step forward and put their truth on the line unless he does it himself first. He can't ask somebody to do something that he's not willing to do himself. So I really like that.
And look, I think what I'd love to say to listeners is to not just rely on social media or mainstream media to be informed about voice and treaty and truth-telling, but to read widely, to listen widely. And, a book like Aaron and Michelle's, that they've put together is a great way to begin. It's a memoir about somebody living the racism and living as a Torres Strait Islander man, as a black man in Australia, and how he has, the ups and downs of his life and all the humanity involved in it. And I've just finished reading also Sister Girl by Dr. Jackie Huggins, a Aboriginal woman and professor and advocate and change agent, and reading sort of some essays of hers and speeches over 10 years and seeing deeper into what she as a black woman faced in terms of her life. And really recommend seek out Indigenous authors and read their stories, whether they are memoirs or whether they are non-fiction or whether they're fiction. Claire Coleman, I love her sci-fi, and there's always that element of sort of indigeneity. I'm not quite sure how to express it, but they're beautiful writers, so many great writers that you can read really widely and get a sense of the truth-telling and listen to some of the tragedies of those stories, but also how strong so many of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are to survive the colonisation and, the attempts at genocide and all those kind of things. So, I'm just so amazed to listen to somebody like Aaron talk about, and listen to the strength and courage and the resilience that he had, to after the tragedies in his life. So just, amazing.
Yeah, and another thing that Aaron brought up, which I think that sent me down a couple of very curious rabbit holes on my mental journey. So, listeners, I ask you for forgiveness ahead of what I'm about to say. But he mentioned that when people, one of the things he finds when people visit, go to the Torres Strait Islands or experience or have a taste, shall I say, of that lifestyle where his people are just so connected to nature and the universe. So they're so ingrained with every element of the weather, with the stars, with the land, with the sand, it's that they just have a perfect place in the sense of their reality is so entwined with the nature and the universe around them. And I think that is something that, of course, would be wonderful for so many people to experience, because then, of course, that gives such a beautiful new perspective on life. And then, and for a lot of people, that perspective, when you discover it, other things fall away, like any sort of negative thoughts or those elements that can rear up as racism or violence and all that sort of stuff. When you have that moment, and I guess you could almost say it's a spiritual moment or a universally cosmic moment. But here's where it gets down the weird rabbit hole. It was making me think of, reading a lot about, Timothy Leary back in the day, and where he was, at first he was the professor, and that discovery of LSD, and before it hit the streets and etc., he was fascinated with the idea of the ability to give somebody a moment of a spiritual or cosmic event, and a moment in time where they become hyper aware of their place in the universe. The effect that it had was so profound that he thought it should be a universal right, especially where he was writing at the time, from high crime cities in America, etc., where he was saying, unless you are brought up, maybe you can get a similar thing in church if you really want to get religious, but for the most people, they live in concrete jungles. There's no opportunity for that connection with land and with the sky and the universe, or that cosmic connection. And through himself and the people that he worked with, they went to prisons and did like a one-off dose and then followed up with the prisoners and had amazing success rates of recidivism, where I think like something like 90+% of people that were part of the trial didn't go back because they walked out with a whole different reality, a whole different respect for the cosmos and for life, and and all the lines and divisions that are set by society broke down. And I think it's fascinating. So, and that of course led to the rabbit hole.
I was going to say that is definitely a rabbit hole.
It is, but then of course that led me back. We can't, I'm not advocating everyone should take LSD, not at all. But
I hope not, Darren, because that would be a very bad thing to suggest.
Absolutely. But so the next thing is the power of literature and the power of own voice stories, or the power of books that can, that for people that can't get to be in a position where they can experience that cosmic connection. Because we were just talking about hills hoists and suburbia, and for a lot of people that is life. And so weather doesn't play too much of a part, just whether you've got to take your umbrella or not when you get on the train to go to work, or whether you've got to put the wipers on the car, or the aircon at home, or the heater at home. That's about it. It's not a case of every element of nature being such a vital part of your everyday existence. So that's all that round circle is the power of story and power of literature to try, I think, give people the opportunity to experience that cosmic connection, which is something that Aaron talked about, which I think is something that should be celebrated. And I'd love to see a bigger incorporation of that understanding, that wonderful gift of awareness of the place in the universe that the oldest culture on the world has, and that
for sure.
I'd love to start seeing come to more of the forefront. And it's thanks to someone like Michelle, who obviously comes from a completely different lifestyle. She's helped to bring Aaron's story to all of us, and and that's of course the first Torres Strait Islander biography. So hopefully it opens the floodgates, and then maybe we get more and more opportunities to read about a lifestyle and an understanding of land and sky and everything around us. We get to understand so many more aspects of it, and it becomes so more entrenched in the way we think, so that we can perhaps strip away some of the negative elements that come with being in concrete jungles and cities and stuff. So there you go.
That is a big rabbit hole. Interesting. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that we are seeing more and more stories of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, not only in books, but certainly I watch a lot more NITV. There's some fantastic stuff happening at the moment. There is the Australian Wars that director Rachel Perkins has completed over, I think she worked for like 7-8 years putting this together, and that is absolutely brilliant. And that's about from an Aboriginal point of view, from the First Nations people who were here and the British coming in, and presents a much more balanced view of Australian history, and the fact that the wars as they were, the frontier wars, were not really recognised as being part of Australian history, by the British. Not that they hadn't done this for other countries as well, but the Australian Wars is definitely worth watching on SBS. You can do that. And also I've watched Servant and Slave. So that's the stories of 4 women, 4 Aboriginal women who were taken from families and sent out as domestics out into rural properties and their experiences, and then coming into the city. But there's also a great one called History Bites Back, and that really is the using the sense of humour and a little bit of tongue-in-cheek and great different aspects of how to tell stories. And so many of the oral so much of the oral history that has been the way that Aboriginal culture has survived for 60,000 70,000 years. It's fantastic to see it being shared using other media, so that more people can get a sense of that connection to country that people do. So brilliant.
And I think my completely off the wall sort of circle of rabbits there, but in essence, I think as there should be, there's a lot of talk about the true history of the colonisation of Australia and a lot of the atrocities. absolutely. That has to be brought to the table. It has to be discussed. I don't know at what point what the outcome is with all that, as far as, you know, whether we change history to be more accurate. Whatever comes from that, it has to come, and it will happen, and it is, you know, stuff we need to look at. But how do we? What steps are we taking? I mean, it's easy to talk about, you know, and just say, oh, you know, our relationship to land, or our relationship to country. But how do we bring that? I mean, you and I are a little bit different in the sense of we love nature, and I mean, I just got back from, you know, 6 days in the Flinders Ranges in the middle of nowhere, with, you know, hanging out with emus and rock wallabies and sleeping under the stars, and, you know, I love that. So I do feel a connection. You know, I spend a lot of time in all different areas of Australia and out in remote areas, and, you know, I can take that time to listen to the rhythm, to feel the power around me, to feel the, you know, the energy and the history, you know, of the country, the land that I'm standing on. But Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, you know, Perth, Hobart, people that are living in a city and may not normally necessarily get out and have those opportunities. How do we bring that in? I'm really hoping that the voices or the tales in some really good, you know, literature, I'm hoping that can at least halfway get somebody either to experience it through words, or motivate them enough to go out and experience it for themselves. And I think, because we say always connection to the land, but, you know, it's a very abstract notion for 90% of us, really, isn't it?
It is, although it's interesting, you know, when we have a chat, you know, the chat we have coming up with Claire Roden in the Writers' Lounge, and the local park, and the small inspiration that she got there. So we don't have to always look for the big stuff. Sometimes it is just getting under a tree, and there are plenty out there, you know. Find a tree, find a bit of grass, people, and just give yourself a minute to stop.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think if you picked up a blade of grass and had a good look, you'd find the universe in there.
Well, I've been picking grass for my new chickens. There's a segue for you. Because currently, you know, we have 3 new ladies in the flock, and so we try and leave them in the hen house so that they know that this is home, and this is where they can be safe. And so I've been hand feeding them some grass along with their seeds. So tomorrow they'll get out and about in the garden. They get a really good life if they come and live at our place at the Strachan's. But yes, so blades of grass, really interesting.
There we go. Will there be plenty of blades of grass at the moment with all their own? But in short, to both Aaron and Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a real privilege to chat with you both, and
yes,
I suspect that the collaboration has definitely not ended with so far so good, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what surprises may be coming in the future. You know, whether they do work on a screenplay together, or maybe, as you heard in the interview, the possibility, although of a sequel, but, you know, it was like, I think it might be like Daniel Craig when they asked him if he was going to do another Bond, and he basically said,
that's
no
another
way.
Anniversary. Yes, that's another anniversary. Is it 50 years since Dr. No, since the first
I don't know
James
that
Bond
much.
movie? I think my husband was telling me that. So yeah.
Oh, I'm not that big of a Bond fan.
A Bond fanatic. So there you go.
Oh,
all right.
So thank you to Aaron and Michelle. And now maybe it's time to, let's wind down with a drink in maybe the Writers' Lounge. I feel like it's time for a bit of a drink.
Definitely.
I'm not going to go with my seedy underground one this time. No, because I'm really trying to usher in spring. Winter needs a good proverbial punch, like a friendly one.
Yeah.
But just like a go away winter. So I think this lounge is, I think this one's on the beach. Everything's beach today. So this is a beach lounge, and sitting out on the balcony, got the sun on my back, and you know, people skateboarding past, the waves are cracking. Good. So let's go in. Of course, there's still jazz music. Love jazz music in the lounge bar. Where's your lounge bar today?
Well, I sort of allowed myself to jump into yours, and I was going to say there has to be jazz, because that really is the by the beach late Sunday afternoon. A few old blokes just, you know, in the background. Yeah, I love it. Let's bring it on.
I'm a heavy metal man, but if I'm going to go sit in a bar, just a little bit of jazz. Let's slow it down. Let's step on in.
Listeners, we are in the Writers' Lounge again, and we are absolutely thrilled to have with us Claire Roden. Now, we haven't seen Claire since back in the days of the romance panel, which was way back when Claire was trying her hand moving from sci-fi and fantasy into romance. But now she's moved into middle grade, and I want to tell you a little bit about Claire before we, get her to say hello. She started writing stories as a young child and never really stopped, and that's pretty obvious. She's the author of 4 novels and many short stories. She lives in Bunranong Country in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne, Australia, with her husband and a highly intelligent poodle cross called Erin. I have to check whether that's the way to say the poodle cross's name. So Claire's writing is inspired by society, culture and the march of history, but mostly by dreams. Her thought-provoking stories and accessible characters inspire hope and optimism through challenging times. And her novels range from the dystopian world of the Chronicles of the Pale trilogy, which I love, to her World War I novel, Stars in the Night, which I also love, based on her PhD studies into the literature of the First World War. Claire's short stories range from sweet to devastating, happy ever after to the end of everything, and usually include a canine character, but I'm just going to say that not necessarily in this new book. So welcome to the Writers' Lounge, Claire.
Oh, thank you very much for that nice introduction. And yes, Erin is my dog.
Okay.
So that's she doesn't know how it's spelt, so it's okay. She doesn't realise that I've gifted her with a weird name.
So she doesn't have to continually spell it every time.
No, that's right. Yeah,
very good.
It's not too cruel on her.
Okay.
Yes, cats and dogs. Dogs get a mention, but they don't actually feature as characters in this book because I dreamt about a cat. So this book was inspired about a dream. I dreamt I was in a car that ran over a cat on a rainy, windy night.
Oh, no.
We stopped and jumped out. There was no cat, but there was a silver bangle on the ground.
Wow.
Literally, when I picked up the silver bangle, it turned into a cat in my arms in the dream.
Brilliant.
Yes,
Claire,
so this is the start of it.
I suspect now that you were just talking about how your dog doesn't care for the spelling. However, this dream may have a lot more symbolism than you think. So,
go on.
So it turned into
Psychoanalyse me.
a bangle, but then maybe it was telling you to get a Bengal cat. A twist on the spelling. There we are.
Yes.
So Claire has a book which is newly onto the Australian Book Lovers website, and it's called How to Survive Your Magical Family. So Claire, tell us a little bit about, let's go into the book first, then you can tell us what you've been up to, because obviously this is all about it. So How to Survive Your Magical Family. We hear it's from a dream, but what's it about?
It's about family and found family, basically. So our hero and heroine are Toby and Mia, who are 16-year-old next-door neighbours. Mm-hmm. Toby's family is magical, and magic in this book is part of the everyday. So it's kind of explained as magic is always there, but not everybody can see it and not everybody can use it. And it's also have a little bit, is magic part of nature that we're just beginning to understand in the same way as we understand, germs that we didn't understand back in the day? Or is it something special? Toby's family's magical, but he's not. All he can do is talk to cats. Okay, and he's worried that he's going to be flat. There's the flat world and the magic world. It's quite a conundrum for him because his dad is a famous surgeon, his uncle's a famous ER surgeon, his sister's a lawyer. His mother was a great lawyer too, but she disappeared from his life when he was 6, and he doesn't really understand what happened. So the story revolves around Toby and his sister in the car. The magic bangle thing happens. He saves a cat who's been missing for decades, who's an arch cat, a magic cat. And that means that something's going to go wrong in the magic world or the flat world, because otherwise, why else would Catkin appear? So that's kind of the start of it. Yeah. And then we have 2 voices. We have Toby's voice as he kind of survives a kidnapping and works out how to use his magic, and Mia's voice, who's his best friend, as she leads the hunt for him because he goes missing. So they eventually come back together. Yeah, so it's
Very
a bit
cool,
of a
very cool.
mishmash. Yeah, a mystery and a magic book. Yeah.
And you mentioned, Claire, that
magic cats.
oh, well, magic. I'll take
Magic
Toby's. I'll be Flat and Toby if I can talk to cats. That's no problem. So
yeah,
bring on the
exactly,
flat
yeah.
world. But Claire, you mentioned the book is kind of for a bit of a in between demographic. Well, a somewhat perceived in between demographic. So you mentioned, was it the 14 to 16?
About the 11 to 14.
11
we're
to 14,
finding
my
is the
apologies.
kind of sweet spot. No, that's okay. It's the top end of middle grade and the bottom end of YA. It doesn't actually have its own. I'm sure the industry will come up with a name for it. We're just calling it in between books.
Yeah, in between is good.
Yeah,
So these are kids who are what, about grade 5?
Yeah,
and
5,
6?
6, 7. Yeah,
7. Yep.
is the kind of is the people who are really enjoying it. And a lot of readers are saying, "I wish I'd had this book when I was 11," which
there
I
you
think
go.
is really lovely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank
Now,
you.
you're talking to cat people, and I can see on your website, which is all new and lovely since last I looked, because I get your
good,
blog and I
yes.
enjoy that.
Yes.
And there's a picture there of a cat, Darren, who looks a little bit like a certain Bobby who lives at your place.
Oh, how wonderful!
I will have to have
So
a look.
Archcat Flax, who belongs to Toby's
He's a
dad.
Maine Coon.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the
Flex
big
is,
cats.
yes, he's a big
gorgeous.
cat. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Well, we could gush about cats all day, but tell me, there's some special elements in the book that are a part of the design, and the cover is just magical. It's
it's a
just
beauty.
2 colours. It's like a pale kind of washed yellow, but then there's this gorgeous flat cat and Gumbly. So tell us about how that came about.
I wanted to brand my publisher, Odyssey Books. Michelle will always ask me, what do I want on the cover? I know that's not always the case with everybody's publishers. Sometimes you're not involved at all. And I said, I think it needs to have a cat because it's based around cat, and I want cat people to know there's cats in it.
Yes.
And I want, my general readers, dog people, to know, okay, this one's got cats. Plus it will. But I also wanted it to be very Australian because it's an Australian adventure. So I thought of gum leaves. Now the cover designer is Elijah Toten, who's done all my books, very different genres. I'm a bit of a difficult author because I write across genres. And I think he's done a fabulous job. And we've reused the stylized cat to do section breaks and the little gum leaves on the top of each chapter, just as a kind of a washout. But as you write, 2 colours. The lemon and black, and it's come up really. I'm really happy with it. Love it.
Clean and crisp. And the funny thing is, where the image of the cat looks obviously amazing, and then but it also comes across as almost like a house, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so that's a really nice design, because obviously the house being for the family. So.
For the family, and it's also kind of like a doorway too. I thought it's kind of enter here. What's
absolutely.
in there.
Enter here, all dog lovers, for you shall be converted.
Will be converted. Yes.
But Claire, you said you obviously write across a lot of genres. Now that the new book's out, are you working on anything completely different again?
This book has been gestating for a while, so it was a little bit held up by the COVID pandemic. So it's actually published later than it was meant to be, than it was originally scheduled. So in the meantime, to stop myself from going mad, I've been writing short stories and editing. So I've had a couple of, there are going to be 2 books with Australian speculative fiction group, Where the Weird Things Are. So I wrote in that and also edited with Austin Sheen.
Nice.
And there's a second volume of that coming out. And I also had a mad idea last year, walking around the park with a mask on and my dog. Only person there.
Not with a knife, hopefully.
No. Listening to music from the ABC Classic. There's a show called The Game Show. It's music from video games. I don't play video games, but I love the music and I find it very inspirational and very calming. And I thought this music sounds like First World War kind of, it was, I don't know, War of the Worlds or something.
Very
and it made me think of
isn't it?
T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. And I thought, what would be cool? Some short stories based on T.S. Eliot on The Wasteland. I don't know whether you know that poem. You might have done it at school or not.
We spoke to Nikki Lee, and she told us a little bit about how you were putting together from this very strange idea. So that's
very
lovely to
strange
hear
idea.
that's where it came from.
Well, I looked it up and I discovered that it's the centenary of that poem this month in October 2022. So it was published October 1922. Very bizarre. I put out a call for does anybody else want to join in this? Is this kind of weird? And got together 19 of us all together, and that's being published by PS Publishing in the UK.
Oh, fantastic.
Hardcover, signed copies coming out later this month. It's just so exciting. So
it's great.
I'm thrilled with that.
What a way to come out of the pandemic.
That's, exactly. And it did come out of the pandemic. Me on my own listening to music, wandering around the park with Erin. With a mask on going, this is kind of, a bit boring. This is a bit dull. This is a bit sad. Ooh, that's interesting. So I have kept busy and a few short stories accepted, including a romance one. So excellent. I'm hoping next year that I'll be able to put together a collection. Might be the next book that comes out is a collection of short stories.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, cool.
Definitely busy.
Well, ideas don't stop, do they?
No, they never do.
No. Listen to the writers, we're going, no.
Even the really bad ones.
They just keep coming at you. They just keep flying at you. And something has to be done with them. And nobody else is going to write your book.
No, that's
exactly. Somebody else might fold the washing, but they're not going to write your book.
You can't see, but we are in the writers' lounge, and I've just listened to my drink to cheers to that statement.
Yes.
Nobody else is going to write your book. I think that one goes on a coffee mug and a t-shirt.
But can I just say that as I whinged about nobody being able to finish the editing for the second volume that I'm working on, my husband said, "Look, just don't fold the washing, just leave it to me. I'll fold it when I get home."
Yes.
Isn't he a sweetie? And
that's really lovely.
Yeah. And it's just one little thing because you think, I'll just do that. And working from home, I tend to, you do some client work and then you dash out and throw the washing on and you dash out and do this, that and the other. So, yes, I might just have to take him up on the
very dangerous that we need to take ourselves seriously before anybody else will.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely.
If we were surgeons, they wouldn't say fold the washing before you get started.
Although I do know Lisa Kenway, who's one of the Oz writers, she's an anaesthetist, so she's got kids too. I suspect she still folds her washing. But must ask her that. Yes, so take ourselves seriously. Now, you also are
At least for an hour a day.
At least for an hour a day, that's it. And are you still doing reviews for Aurealis?
I am. I'm just absolutely loving it. So just got a couple to finish off for this year because November's the last issue. It's a fabulous way to keep up with what's being published in our speculative fiction genres. And I also get feedback on my writing. So I have to write a review in under 350 words, under 300 for preference. And I love working with the editor. So Jen Bacon's the editor, and we just have this back and forth. We do pretty well, and I think it's really honed my writing. I think it's excellent. Yeah,
that's good. I am subscribed to Aurealis, but I must admit they sit there on my email for a while. I think, oh no, I must get there. I'm terrible at over subscribing to books and reviews and things, and I have to be a little bit careful because spending too much time reading, even though it's for research, saw me inverted, talking marks there. Research, it's a little bit tempting to read somebody else, and it can also get a little bit disheartened. I've just gone through Kate Elliott's fabulous Crown of Stars series again, which I'm missing the last book. I've given it away to somebody. I'll have to go and find it again. But it's like, this world, I love the really complex, deep worlds full of, she's got religion and politics and so many relationships. But anyway.
She has all those competing interests.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you don't know who to barrack for, but
No, which is good. Yeah.
But anyway, back to ours and back to yours. So thank you for sharing how to survive your magical family. Tell us where people can find you on the interwebs when you're not in the Writers' Lounge with Darren and I.
Yeah, just claireroden.com.
Beautiful.
So,
nice, easy one.
Nice, easy one, yeah.
Well, I have a couple of quick questions for you, Claire.
Oh, good, yes.
So the first one, I know that you are a dog lover and obviously a cat features in your latest book. In the real world, if you had to assign magic powers to just one of the animals, the dog or the cat, which one would be the safer option?
Oh, the dog.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
I was just going to say you've slid down just a
Oh,
notch
yes,
there on the
sorry.
ladder, Claire.
I can just imagine like fridges opening all across the house
Yes, yeah.
and all the food flying off the shelves.
I suppose I probably should say, let's define safe. What's the safest option first?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's right. The cat, I think, don't they say cats have dogs have
cats
owners and cats have
servants. That's exactly right.
True,
They
yeah.
certainly do.
Actually, yeah, now you've made me scared about giving cat power.
Of course, the cats in my book have powers for good, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
So they cannot be evil. There's not a bone
No,
in their
no,
body that's evil. Mischievous, yes. But my second one is, now Toby has the power, the character in your book has the power to talk to cats.
Yes.
As being a teenager, he's probably got a good appetite. So if you had to name a special hamburger after his ability to talk to cats, what do you think the hamburger would be?
Ooh, that's a very... Oh, it would have to be the feline special, wouldn't it?
Oh, okay. I hope this sounds like it's got cat meat in it.
Yes, it might. Yes, we might have to workshop that a bit.
I was thinking maybe special feline, but even that...
Well, his middle name is Felix, so maybe we could just call it, the Felix. Like, you have the Reuben. Maybe we just call it the Felix.
Yeah. Felix double pounder or something.
Yes,
like
yes,
that.
that's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Sounds
perfect.
good. Yeah.
Well, a big clink clink cheers, Claire.
Yes, thank you.
For popping in and joining us in the lounge, and for your short stories, and for the submission of your brand new book, and for always being such a fun part of the Australian Book Lovers. And hope we will definitely, hopefully, do this again real soon. And,
Yes, that'd be lovely.
Wishing you all the best of luck for the new release. It looks fantastic, and I think it's going to be a huge hit.
Great. Thank you, Darren. Thanks, Veronica.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Claire, for a fabulous visit to the Writers' Lounge. It was so good catching up and hearing all of the things. I'm just amazed at all of the things that she is able to put into her life in terms of writing, and that's all we hear about. I'm sure she's got lots of other stuff happening with her little dog, Aaron, etc. Love the inspiration that she got in the park, and please keep a lookout for how to survive your magical family.
I love that a dream is the source of the story, especially the story about magic as well, and magical cats. And but isn't it? That's just a cool thing about this weird thing called life, isn't it? To have a dream, which is weird enough in itself, and now it's manifested as a really cool book. So well done. I love it. But thank you so much, Claire. It was a pleasure having a drink with you in the Writers' Lounge, and of course the bar is always open, and we hope to see you there again soon.
Definitely, the bar is open, and it's time for quotes. I wanted to share with you, so Oz Writes, which we know from last episode, is the brainchild of the delightful Reb Langham and Kevin Clare. Now, in October's Oz Writes prompts, one of them was share one of your favourite quotes. So I've actually stolen this one from Elisa Dominique, who her Twitter handle is at twitnikki, Nikki. And she's quoted from The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. This is the quote. And I thought this was really good for the conversation that we had with Aaron and Michelle. And the air was full of thoughts and things to say. But at times like these, only the small things are ever said. Big things lurk unsaid inside.
That's simmering.
Mind you, I think Aaron and Michelle have said the big things, but I really love the idea that the air was full of thoughts and things to say. And I feel like Australia is kind of there at the moment.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes there's those moments in time where there are the big things that can be talked about, but the fact that that each person's feeling it, and sometimes the small talk kind of, I don't know, it seems fitting in a weird way.
It can be an opener, or it can be allegory, or it can just be a gentle way in to, nice.
Yeah, nice quote.
Yeah, what do you got?
Okay, I have a quote by John Hume. So Just thinking about the conversation we had with Aaron and Michelle, and how we trying to revise our relationships and stuff, and just as a culture, how do we come together as a culture? So the quote is, difference is of the essence of humanity. Difference is an accident of birth, and it should therefore never be the source of hatred or conflict. The answer to difference is to respect it. Therein lies a most fundamental principle of peace, respect for diversity. So that was by John Hume. And I think that is, I just love that difference is an accident of birth. I mean, that's really, if you want to shoot an arrow straight to the heart of the issue, it's either you haven't got two brain cells in your head and you assume that you chose somehow to be born where you were born and therefore that has some sort of power, or you realise you had no choice where you're born, and that means nobody has any choice where they're born. We are all equally born into the world randomly. We are all random human beings. I just don't get where some, so many aspects of power and let's say it, racism, come from people feeling as though they represent something that they control or chose, when that's not the case at all. Difference is an accident of birth. And like I think Richard Dawkins once wrote, all babies are born religiously neutral. Yeah. And I think that's true. Very similar. And same thing, what happens beyond that comes down to society. And I think the same thing when it comes to our culture. But so that really touched me. That quote touched me. As in such a couple of words just went bam. Difference is an accident of birth. I love it. So there we go. Yes.
And if you want to see more fabulous quotes, jump onto Twitter, onto the OzRights hashtag, and have a look at. I think it was day 4th of October. Brilliant quotes. Lots of brilliant quotes there. Really good.
Oh, good.
I did sneak a couple in, of course. All right. And if you want to find Australian book lovers on social media, on Twitter we are at Australian Books. On Instagram we are at Australian Book Lovers, and we are also on LinkedIn and YouTube. For readers, jump onto AustralianBookLovers.com, pour over the new books, go into your favourite genre page, look at those fabulous little Australian animals and birds that we have there, who are our icons, courtesy of the fabulous Steve, and pick a book, pick an Australian book, listen to a story, get yourself into one of those. And if you are an Australian author of either short stories or novels, please jump onto AustralianBookLovers.com/for-authors and submit your book for free, and we may well be happy to chat to you on the podcast or to put you in the newsletter or give away a story, invite you to the Writers' Lounge, all those kind of things. So please, if you want to keep us going, give us a star on one of the podcasting platforms, or let us know what you like about the show, or give us some ideas for some new segments, because we always like to mix it up and keep things interesting.
Absolutely. So don't forget, on the top of the podcast page on the website, there is a feedback button.
Yes.
Click that. You can send in a recording and just say hello. If you are a horror writer out there, you know it is spooky-ooky time of the year. So if you want to slam up a short story, a good scary short story, and pop it on our short stories on the website, then we would love to read it for possibly a Halloween special coming up. So you've got a horror short story. If you want to write a horror short story, get it in and let's make it a fun Halloween for 2022, which, by the way, I'm very excited because I get to see the original Halloween movie on the big screen, and then I can see the latest Halloween movie, Halloween Ends, on the big screen. So old with new. There we go. And of course, I've dug up some old horror books. But anyway, tagline, Veronica.
Yes.
I have an idea.
Before you go tagline, I do want to say that thanks to the fabulous Alan and Unwan, thank you very much, Alan and Unwan, we have got two brilliant crime stories to give away to our newsletter subscribers. So we have got Chris Hammer's The Tilt, which is just coming out, and we'll be chatting to Chris Hammer very soon, and that is The Darker Secrets Lie Closest to Home. So he is a brilliant Australian crime writer. And we also have a copy of The Liars by Petronella McGovern. So if you would like to win one of these free copies of either The Liars by Petronella McGovern or The Tilt by Chris Hammer, both published by Allen and Unwin, jump onto australianbooklovers.com/booklovers, subscribe to our newsletter, and you could be in the running. Now, these are just for our subscribers. So we have one very lucky subscriber who I think has won 3 books over the 12 months. So sometimes it's what they say, and sometimes there are so many that I just have to spin them in the random wheel and they come out. So jump on there, register your name and email, and you are in the draw.
Absolutely. But it's funny you mentioned the person that won 3 times, because did you see on the news that just recently 430 something people won the jackpot in a in a sort of lotto thing. I can't remember which country it was, and of course so there's going to be an investigation. But the irony is, if you said, they want your money, and if I said, well, what are the odds of me winning? Yeah. Well, it'd be like 23 million to 1. Okay. Well, what are the odds of at one point in time 400 winners?
Yes.
Same odds. That's called gambling. You can't start investigating it when you lose. So, but anyway, that was quite interesting. But yes, nonetheless, thank you so much to Alan Unwin. That's going to be great. And of course, we've got an interview coming up next episode. In the meantime,
we're also chatting to Petronella McGovern later in the year. I know she's. We have her on the schedule, which is fantastic. So great.
Yes, of course. We've got lots of fantastic guests coming up. So definitely. So the spring's only just begun. We are going to have a huge spring and summer. It's going to be amazing. But in the meantime, tagline. Mm-hmm. As I was mentioning, I do have an idea.
Okay.
We've covered some pretty serious topics, and as we which we needed to, and a great opportunity to discuss. But I thought maybe have a little bit of fun. And as we know that back in the day, Aaron was actually a bouncer at King's Cross, which would have come with its own adventures. So I'm thinking we are bouncers. We're both standing at the door, but the entry is you got to have an Australian book. So we say, quick, we see your book. Oh, I didn't bring a book. And then we say, well, remember, you need to. And I'll put the sounds of King's Cross. So righto. we can do our bouncer voice, something along those lines. I don't know what a bouncer voice is.
Bouncer voice. Let me just think about that. I have no idea.
It's
been a while since I was at a disco, Darren.
Yeah, very deadpan.
Back in the 70s, we spoke about that. Oh no, the 80s actually. I was just in the 80s. Anyway, okay.
Well, you got to put your hands, lock your arms across your chest. Remember, you're not even looking at them; you're looking straight over the top of them. So here we go, and I'll kick it off. Can I see your Australian booklet? Oh, I don't bring one. Well then, sorry, you're going to have to remember to read more
Aussie books. Don't come back till you got one.
But I know. Go get a book now. All right, there we go. Another shockingly bad attempt at a tagline. Thank you to everyone for joining episode 69.
So many great guests, so many great books.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Claire. Thank you to authors for the new submissions. Yeah, so much to explore. And we can't wait to join you on episode, number 70. So,
yes.
But in the meantime, take care.
Bye for now.
Let's meet again, where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.